Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where it's about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. A great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I'm going to kind of divide this up, between Sam's side of things and then Bucky's side of things. Let's start off with Sam's side of things. Obviously, we got that great action sequence at the very beginning. Obviously, very, government job, basically retrieving somebody. There's this group known as LAF. Maybe they're not someone we're really supposed to know. I guess it's just, hey, this is some bad people. They took someone for some intel. You need to get to them before they cross over this boundary, because the moment we do, we're going to lose our jurisdiction, and could cause like a national incident type of situation. So pretty badass, Sam getting aboard the plane and everything and kicking ass. I liked him being stealthy at first, and that guy's like, "Whoa, I just saw a dude outside the windshield," and the other dude's like, "I'm gonna kill you, you're crazy." But he, Sam busting in, it's so cool, because I feel like we don't get too many instances. I think Winter Soldier and Civil War, the last times we really got an opportunity to really see Sam fight in that really close quarters combat type of way. Because during Infinity War, and I think in Endgame, to be fair, I haven't seen Endgame second time through yet, but it's very high flight powers. It's kind of so seeing him grounded hand to hand combat. Even at one point, he was taking this dude down, and he used his boosters to kind of slide himself forward. I was like, that's just a sick tactic during fight. But also had he previously ever used his wings as a shield? I feel like I don't remember that. Obviously, these are much more advanced wings and stuff, but I feel like I don't remember. To be fair, I've rewatched most of the MCU movies, but it's been a while since I rewatched them, but I don't remember that, so that might be new. But regardless, the flying and everything, it just looked awesome. It's so crazy, because it's just it felt like you were man, this feels like I am legitimately just watching a movie. It's so crazy, because obviously, it's little apples and oranges to WandaVision, because these are very different shows. They're going for different vibes. That was the very sitcom-y mystery angle to it, of oh, this weird stuff that's going on. And I'm even comparing openings like this, that being opening with sitcoms versus this being this feels like out of a straight out of an action movie. It feels oh, you're watching a Bourne movie. It's kind of a Jason Bourne movie. It kind of feels kind of like that. But nevertheless, it actually brings up some interesting stuff, because obviously he's doing this because he's taking government jobs, and obviously the conversation comes up later on, and I'll get into it, because I thought it was so fascinating, how do Avengers get paid? And because that also got me thinking about I didn't think about it the entire time of WandaVision, but it's where are the rest of the Avengers post Endgame? I mean, because obviously we know WandaVision takes place roughly a couple weeks after Endgame. I don't know what. I'm assuming this takes place some months later. So I think maybe by this point in time that Falcon and the Winter Soldier is happening. Maybe Far From Home has already happened, because once again, I don't remember it, but that's also because I haven't rewatched it. That someone said Far From Home takes place 8 months after Endgame. So this might take place before then. I don't know, but I just thought that was kind of interesting of oh yeah, how do Avengers get paid? He was oh yeah, basically people kind of are inclined. So it's almost because he was also oh, did Tony ever pay you? But it's no, it was never anything like that, which I thought that was kind of interesting. Because I think that becomes a question of yeah, how do superheroes kind of get by? But also, like I said, where are the rest of the Avengers? It's a comic book thing of oh, why certain heroes, yeah, they're in this universe, but why you don't see them, yada yada. Not even just that, but it's also what is everyone doing? Because it seems obviously where Bucky and Sam are, they went their separate ways. You would think Steve's situation would bring them together, but instead they kind of went their separate ways. Obviously they're dealing with different things. Like I said, we'll get to that soon enough. But I think it's so fascinating, because it makes me wonder, did the Avengers not necessarily break up? Obviously they broke up because of Civil War, but it makes you wonder, they never fully officially came back together. I think still everyone was still doing their thing, because that gap they never had that opportunity to really fix things during Infinity War, because it was yo, Thanos is here, his kids are here, gotta jump on this quick. So they never really had a chance. I mean, that 5-year gap, a lot of the Avengers were going to, so there was still no bridging the gap in that regard either. So a lot happened post Endgame as well. So there's no real time. So the Avengers are probably a little scattered in many more ways than one, because they have, once again, they never really had an opportunity to fully fix everything, after Civil War. But I don't know, I thought that was such a fascinating just thing to kind of think about. Like maybe the rest of the Avengers are out kind of doing their own thing. Like maybe everyone decided to kind of go their separate ways to kind of figure everything out after all in, that they've lost, as, fellow friends, Avengers, family, during these circumstances. But it was really interesting. We learned a little bit more about kind of what's going on in these past 5 years, that this group who are appearing to be kind of some of the main antagonists, or at least one of the main antagonists of this season, being Flag Smashers. They're a group of people who believe that the world is better during the blip, which Torres was like, yeah, but having been there myself, he's like, I don't believe in that. But basically they believe in living in a unified world without borders. And he's like, yeah, you could see why that could be appealing to certain people, because I think it's a thing of we're one people. We shouldn't let borders keep us locked away from each other, because considering what happened then, it's we came together as the remnants, the 50% that were left behind on planet Earth. We came together, so we don't need to go back. I think it's the world is trying to rebuild itself after what we went through. It's there's no going back from that. We can only go forward with what the world was before, but we're trying to restore to the world what it was pre those 5 years. Those 5 years of living without half the population. And I just thought that was kind of an interesting element. But Sam's side of things is mostly focusing on him trying to, it seems like repair kind of a relationship he has with his sister. Granted, his sister's trying to sell the ship. I think the ship said, was it Paul and Darlene? I'm assuming that's their parents' name. But for her, it's the business isn't what it was, and she's got to do what she can to look after her kids. Obviously she had to live that 5 years struggling, and it's she needs to do whatever she can just to survive. She says I make $5 just to end up spending 10. So it's I'm coming out in the negative on the situation. But Sam doesn't want her to do that, because it's this is not only about the house, about the boat, this is our family legacy. And I think maybe for Sam, it's also because I wasn't here during those 5 years and hearing how much you struggled. But it also seems like him and his sister have even more history of because Sam always wants to try and come to the rescue, but it's also she kind of throws it in his face later on of you are the one that decided to join up and sign up for the military. It's not my fault that you weren't there to see what mom and dad were really struggling with. And I think maybe that's what Sam is also doing, making up for hey, I wasn't there, because it seems at least his dad died before him, because it's you made a deal with daddy before he died. You go handle things up there, kind of, do your thing as Falcon. Or maybe specifically, I think she wasn't talking about that specifically, probably talking about his military days. That's probably what she was specifically referencing. So maybe his dad died sometime after he had joined the military, but not before the whole Falcon thing came up. I don't know. I don't think in Winter Soldier they ever really touched on that at all, his family circumstances. Maybe they did, I didn't remember. Because he talks about it, right, having been gone 5 years, he comes back and his nephews are, always yeah, look, they're little men now. But, I think it's him trying his best to, I think, make up for the past of, I wasn't there for you, so I got to make up for that time. It's kind of my responsibility. It's let me help you out, because we can't get rid of this stuff, because I think maybe it's guilt or over feeling he wasn't there when his family needed him, whether it was his mom and dad or his sister, because once again she went through these 5 years without him. So it's maybe he's trying to make up for that. Maybe so much other lost time in history amongst things. It's and like I said, maybe it has something to do with their parents in that regard. There's still a lot there, but it seems like there's a lot of unresolved issues that they have. Obviously Sam tries to go with her to set up this whole loan thing, and obviously the guy, he's you look familiar. He's oh, come on. And he was blows out his arms, kind of floating. He's oh my God, Falcon! He's yeah, I knew it. The guy's taking a picture. He's I'm a big fan and everything. But then when it's all said and it's yeah, but yeah. And he brings out all the stuff about your payments, how do Avengers get paid? But then he's also yeah, you don't have any, history of getting paid. And it's yes, because he was gone for 5 years. And Sam's just yeah. But he's yeah, but I have this business plan and everything, but the guy won't help him. It's but me and 7 billion other people disappear. And it's yeah, because of that, the banks have gotten a lot more restrictive on loans, just because everyone's looking for a hand during this situation. But then, his sister looks at it as, oh, it's just interesting that you happen to turn, people away when they look like us. And he's whoa, no, of course he's a hero. That's the fun. that's the messed up thing. And I looked at that scene when he says that. It's like, no, of course he's a hero. It's like, you saying that, not realizing, like, it almost makes it sound like, oh no, I'm only treating him differently because he's a hero. Like, but it's like, if I wasn't a hero, if I was just a black man, like, I'm only getting your time of day because I'm a hero. Like, I shouldn't, considering what happened to all of us, me being a hero, you know, because Sam was almost hoping, like, oh, maybe my publicity could help me, like, under this circumstance, help my family out. But it's also like, oh, like, it doesn't mean anything, like, you know, because sister kind of sees it for what it is. It's like, you know, it shouldn't just be a situation of Sam being the Falcon. That shouldn't be something that kind of be like, oh man, you know, that shouldn't be what should be the thing that draws your attention. It should be like, oh, this is someone that needs help. And it's just interesting, like, you're only willing to give us the time of day because it's Falcon. Even asking, like, oh, can I get a selfie? And he's like, are you serious right now? You're turning down our loans? And yet he's like, you know, you can turn this down if you want to. So, but it would be okay if I get a selfie or whatever. It was like, what? Like, what's wrong with you? But Sam's not willing to give up, you know? So I thought that was kind of interesting, especially when you, like, look at the other side of things. Because I should have talked about it because I thought it was so fascinating, because very few people know the truth about what happened with Steve. Because even Torres was like, yeah, there's a lot of conspiracy theories, which I wonder, is that supposed to be them kind of winking and nodding? Because it's like everyone has their whole theories about, like, how the whole Steve situation worked in Endgame. So I wonder, is that supposed to be a wink and nod to that? Because it's also like, remember, people made that thing about, like, obviously, like, there's the board from WandaVision where it's like, right, like Jimmy, Darcy, and Monica were trying to figure things out, like, or just in general, like Darcy and Jimmy and everyone else were trying to figure things out, like, of that vein, like, you know. So I wonder if it's supposed to be kind of like a wink and nod like that. But regardless, it's like, but a conspiracy is that, like, oh, he lives on the moon and that he's at a base on the moon or something like that. And it's like, did you fly him up there? And he's like, nah. You know, it's like, no moon stuff. But it's like, I got to go to DC for what? Moon stuff. And it's basically a ceremony, and they're honoring Steve, because I think to the general public, Steve is dead. I'm sure the Avengers probably didn't tell anyone the truth about Steve's circumstances, just because I think they don't. It's like, like, you know, he put in his time, he did the hero thing, and it's like, you know, he found a way out, so we just want to leave him to that, you know. And they don't want that kind of take it from him. So they just want him to kind of, whatever time he has left, probably wants him to be able to live it in peace. Not unless they're kind of hinting that maybe enough times passed that Steve died after he handed it off. I think he's still just old man Steve, but I mean, you never know. But what I thought was, you know, fascinating was, like, for, you know, Falcon talking about, yeah, no, it's like, oh yeah, look at Steve, always so stoic, but also talking about the fact is of, you know, symbols don't mean anything without the men and women behind them. So for him, he's handing over the shield because he thought about it earlier in the episode. It's like, this isn't mine. It feels like it's someone else. And for him, this shield, it belongs to Steve. This symbol represents the man that's not here to hold it up anymore. So for Sam, it's like, I'm not worthy enough to hold up this mantle because it's not my mantle. This is Steve's mantle. Steve was Captain America and no one else is. So he'd rather leave the shield there to honor him. And even, you know, Rhodey's talking to him about, like, yo, like, why didn't you take up, you know, the mantle afterwards? And I think for him, it's just, you know, it was Steve's and it's not his. And it's just, you know, because it's the whole situation of the world is kind of, you know, falling apart, and everyone's just everyone's looking to someone to fix it. And just, because the thing is, everyone's just trying to find their way through, like, you know, they went through something as crazy as the blip. It's like piecing the world back together after something like that. It's not the easiest thing on a global level, but also just on a personal level. And I think for Sam, it's just, I don't want to do that. Like, this is my friend. He fought so hard, and so I just, you know, I can't take this mantle because it is his. What he does, I just think Sam feels like everything that Steve represents, I can never live up to that. And it's like, there was one Captain America, and there will always only be, like, I think that's kind of his perspective, at least, you know. But then later on, he sees like the government saying, like, this world needs a new hero, and lo and behold, let's introduce obviously Wyatt Russell as, you know, the new Captain America, and it pisses Sam off because it seems like Sam willingly gave the shield over, but we don't know if they kind of pressed him for a while, and they're the ones that made him realize, like, hey, this is the right thing to do. It's like, they make it sound like Sam kind of came to them rather than trying to track him down. It seems like Sam came to them. Who knows the full story, but for Sam, it's so frustrating because it's like, them doing that, it's a spit in the face to Captain America. I get it, but it's almost like you can find some other hero to fill that void. You have some SOB out there dressed as my friend, like what he sacrificed and gave to you, and you take up his mantle like it's nothing, because to them the mantle, is bigger than one person. And maybe that's something Sam's eventually going to learn, of like, if this world is going to need a Captain America, he will have to go through some stuff before he finds himself fully ready to embrace it. I think I figured that's what the season's going to be about, becoming, Sam deciding whether or not he's ready to take up that mantle. Whether he'll become Captain America at the end of this or not, we'll ultimately have to wait and see, but I think it's quite fascinating. I think it's understandable why it would piss him off. Like I said, it's like a spit in the face to Steve. It's like, the man's quote-unquote grave isn't even, the dirt hasn't even, been settled that long, and you're already, because it's almost like you had me bring out the shield because you wanted to decide who wanted to be the next Captain America. You didn't want me to bring in the shield to honor Steve. You did it just so make this whole publicity stunt of bringing in a new Captain America. There's also the Flag Smasher side of things, where it seems like they might be, because at first, like, Torres is like, oh, they're super strong. It's like, you have an idea, and he's like, no, it's nothing. And it's like, Torres is like, you think kind of like, you think you're super soldiers, so there might be someone else out there. I mean, but the only other super soldiers out there in the world that we're aware of are dead, because Zemo killed them in Civil War, because that wasn't part of his plan, But who knows if someone, like, world's changing out there, so who knows how this came to be and what that all ends up being. We'll ultimately have to wait and see. But that's Sam's side of things. On the other side of things, we have Bucky's side of things, and it seems like he's having nightmares about stuff that he did as a Winter Soldier. Yes, like, he has his memories back, and he's just Bucky now. He's no longer the Winter Soldier, but he's still being haunted by all the stuff that he did, and, that's not the PTSD from that. It's not something that goes away, And obviously he's in therapy, and Raynor's asking him about nightmares. Like, oh, I don't have any nightmares. And she pulls out a notepad. He's like, really? The notepad? That's very passive aggressive. She's like, if you don't talk, I write. And he talks about, obviously she talks about the fact is that he's been pardoned for, like, all his crimes. Like, he gets to embrace his identity of just being James Bucky Barnes, And obviously he talks about, like, there was someone, what was it? Was it a senator or someone? That he helped put into power because, like, she was a pawn for Hydra. But even since Hydra has fell, she still uses her power to abuse it. So it's like, okay, there's the 3 rules: not to do anything illegal, which we see him do, not to hurt anyone. It's like, it's a big one, and it's like, if it's such a big one, why isn't it number 1? And then number 3 is to I forgot the exact. It was basically to make his actual amends. It's like, you actually have to do that. And, like, when he's taking down the senator, he's like, hey, my name is James Bucky Barnes, and I kind of want to apologize for whatever, because the position, he kind of, like, he's making amends to everyone, because it's like, as a Winter Soldier, I did a lot. I put people in some very unfavorable positions. It's like, you're in this corrupt position because I kind of forced you in this. Granted, you're saying of your own volition, but still, I put you down this path. So, and obviously. And I love this line from Bucky where he was like, for him, for the past 90 years, it's been, one fight after another, but being in Wakanda, it's one moment of peace he's had in all that time, And, it's like, well, what do you want? And he's like, peace. And she was like, that's bullshit. Which she's like, wow, you are a terrible shrink. But for her, she's like, I'm someone just from, she has military history too. So for her, it's like, you being alone is a hell all on its own. Just the quiet and being by yourself, that's when you kind of torture yourself the most. So I think that's going to be an interesting element with Bucky. I think it's going to be a dive into, PTSD, like living with what you've done, like, mistakes you've made, and kind of finding a way to move on, live with them. And so we find out he has, like, a older buddy named Yori, who he goes to, like, this place for. It's like, oh, come on, let's go. He's like, I don't want to. It's like, I'm buying. And then Yori kind of takes him up on it. And obviously it's like, like Yori's trying to be like, oh, like, trying to hook him up with the lady that works there. But it turns out Bucky's spending so much time with Yori because it turns out the nightmare he had was of killing Yori's son. It's like, for him, he doesn't know about Bucky. Like, I don't know. Like, who knows how much he knows about Bucky's situation. Like, Bucky's kind of open about his circumstances to a certain extent, about how he was like, oh yeah, like I haven't danced since since 1943 or something like that. And I'm sure on some level that's got to make him think a little bit of Steve. Just the whole thing of like, all right, him wanting that dance with Peggy. So it probably makes him think on some level about that. But he still could never muster up the courage to tell Yori the truth, because Raynor was bringing up the fact that he doesn't have any friends. She's like, this is sad. You don't even have 10 numbers in your phone. You've been ignoring Sam's text. So it shows that Sam hasn't been trying to reach out, but Bucky's just kind of like, with everything going on, I think it's just like how to function as a normal human considering everything that's happened. It's just, once again, it's been one fight to the next for the past 90 years. It's like, well, what do I do? Because it's like, she says, you're free, And he's like, so what do I do? And it's like, that line is actually so sad, because for him, it's like, I have no idea what to do with myself. I don't know how to be just a normal civilian, how to be a normal person. I've been a soldier. I've been a fighter. I've been a killer so much of my life. I don't know what to do with that. Like, without following orders, I don't know what to do, because he spent so much of his life following orders, both willingly and unwillingly, So that, and obviously Bucky ends up going on the date, and obviously it's the whole conversation. She's like, oh, how old are you? He's like 106, and she takes it as a joke, but it's also like, oh, what's with the gloves? And it's like, poor circulation. Because it is a thing of, he's like, oh yeah, tried the whole online dating thing, but it's also like weird to him, just like the pictures, the tigers. It's like he doesn't know what to make of things. He sounds like an old crust, like old grumpy man. But it's also the thing of like, obviously he's not famous enough for people just to casually know his whole circumstances. But obviously, like, he's playing a board game with her, because she's like, oh yeah, when work kind of gets slow, I like to play, and like they're playing Battleship, and she's asking questions about him. It's like, do you have a sister? And he was like, yeah, I have one. So the way he's talking about that must mean she's still alive, but she's probably very old, maybe. And it's like, well, his parents passed away a long time. I don't know. His sister might not be around anymore either. But it's like, it's like, right. It's the problem of like, because that actually made me think about that line, because I forgot there was that line from Sam, because he was saying like the world is fine without a Captain America, because the world went like 75 years without Steve while he was on ice, so the world can do. But it's like for Rhodey, it's like not like the world's different now. Like that might have applied to the world before, but things are way different now. So, but with that situation, during a date, she's bringing up like, oh, I think it's pretty dope what you do with Yori. It's like, for him, he's been pretty messed up, what happened to his son. Because she even said, like, obviously when your significant other dies, you're called a widower. When a parent dies and a child's left alone, they're called an orphan. There's no word to describe a parent who's lost a child. It's like one of the hardest things, and it's just making Bucky feel more and more guilty, to the point like he kind of left his date early and went to go see Yori, and it's like he wanted to talk about it, but he sees like Yori's picture of his son in the background, and it's just, he can't bring himself to admit it. Like, I think because it's like, I think being around Yori is his way to kind of make amends, but it's like, it's not fully making amends, because like he can't bring himself to admit what he did, because Yori is, I think, the closest thing he has to a friend. But I think there is also the other element I should also consider is, how can you even begin to make amends for something like that? Because at least maybe the other people, like that Senator at the beginning, I might have done something where I forced you in a situation. I can somewhat make amends to that because you're alive to make amends to. Like, I killed this man's son, and like it ruined him and destroyed him, and now he's wrinkled with like, never knowing what actually happened to him, because he's like, in my heart I could feel that there was something more to it, but because obviously he was told just wrong place, wrong time. But now like Bucky has the answers for him, but also at the same time it's like, well, what would they do? Because me there's no making amends. I can't make this right. So me telling you the truth always going to do is cause you more pain. So what's more important, the truth and the hurt that comes along with it, or the hurt that comes along with the ignorance of it? Like there's no winning in that situation, and I think that's what Bucky struggles with. Like if I can make things right, if I can make some form of amends, maybe this would be different. But it's just, because there was never really any amends between him and Tony either. I mean, he's responsible. He killed Tony's parents, so it's like there was never any chance for amends there. Like, yeah, that wasn't who I am, but that doesn't take away the fact is I'm the one who still pulled the trigger nonetheless. All that blood is on my hands, especially because Yori's son wasn't even his target. It was just like, you were a bystander, you were a potential witness, so was sadly wrong place, wrong time, so how living with that, like how he handles that, it's going to be a really interesting thing to see that side of Bucky's story in this. So I'm really excited to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.